What's good, everyone? Apologies for uploading so late, but I've been busy to say the least. And now I've come down with a little bit of, the black fucking plague. It's whatever. But today, we're discussing the alt-right modern concept of Fashwave. Fashwave combines elements and beliefs of fascism, National Socialism, and ultranationalism with the vaporwave aesthetics of the 1980s, applying to both vaporwave-inspired art and the vaporwave subgenre of hauntology. In today's video, we'll be discussing the musical side of Fashwave, which is also called Fashwave. I had previously mentioned hauntology, which is a music genre centered around the premise of being particularly nostalgic or reminiscent of a certain time period, thus making modern vaporwave music a subgenre of hauntology. Fashwave is a byproduct of the far-right hijacking an apolitical music genre, combining their various ideologies and other music popular, but not necessarily associated with, the far right. It can be described as an obscure subgenre inheriting elements from synthwave, vaporwave, and funk. It could be argued that Fashwave as a concept is the best example of hauntology. While vaporwave appeals to the nostalgia of the 1980s, Fashwave is more so a desperate attempt to reignite popularity with dead ideologies and regimes. It cannot be any more genuine than that. To go into greater detail, Fashwave's core themes are nostalgia for particular governments, ideologies, nations, or movements that center around ideologies like traditionalism, fundamentalism, ultranationalism, and authoritarianism, along with a particular focus on Nazi Germany in World War II. Both the visual and musical aspects of Fashwave can be found all over the internet, such as Google Images, Pinterest, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Many of these platforms, though, have made attempts, or unfortunately pretended to attempt, removing Fashwave from their platforms, but the results have been mixed. Fashwave still can be found circulating throughout the internet, and it only takes a susceptible person going through a rough time to come across this essentially propaganda and eventually find themselves falling through the alt-right pipeline. It might be perplexing that such a subgenre of music is allowed to exist on major platforms like Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud, but allow me to clarify. Firstly, this subgenre is considered to be somewhat underground, and second, the lack of relevancy or exposure allows for it to slip through the cracks in the guidelines and moderation. And lastly, there's constant re-uploads or reposts of this content under alt accounts or fans of the content. After going through a few studies and some investigation, I've managed to identify two mainstream music streaming sites that can be considered responsible for a majority of Fashwave's exposure. These two sites are Spotify and SoundCloud. Now, to give them some credit, both of these sites have undergone some degree of effort to remove Fashwave from their platform, but the overall results were impartial at best from what I found. So, let's get into that. First up is Spotify. In February of 2022, Spotify had a dispute with the Anti-Defamation League due to a study done by the ADL Center on Technology and Society. The purpose of the study was to identify exploited weaknesses in Spotify's guidelines in terms of service, which there was a lot. Despite Spotify changing their guidelines to counteract the hate speech, it changed essentially nothing, other than giving the far-right artists less breathing room to peddle their hate speech. Even with the crackdowns on these artists, they still had the means to radicalize people vulnerable to extremism by promoting violent rhetoric and praising historically far-right regimes, promoting the concept of turning their insecurities towards animosity towards a certain ethnicity, nation, religion, etc., to vulnerable people. The ADL Center on Extremism would further report on Spotify's growing alt-right scene and would further identify the three most prominent subgenres that promote white supremacy and fascist ideals, the most popular of which is the main topic of this video, Fashwave.
As of making this video, Fashwave musical motifs have been heavily shifting to a similar genre, funk. If you're unaware of what funk is, it was originally a subgenre of hip-hop that was heavily inspired by 90s Memphis rap, also known as Memphis horrorcore.
That name sounds fucking baller.
Along with other primarily Afro-American based genres such as funk and jazz. The irony of a genre originating from African American culture and being co-opted into essentially being exclusively known for being popular white supremacists is not lost on us.
Now, this is usually the part where I would call out these artists producing Fashwave, but my editor and I have made a decision to avoid naming them to prevent increased exposure from them. Not like I'm actually worried about these people, because on my Autumnwaffen video, I got quite a few threats which were all extremely fucking hilarious. But anyways, the ADL study or investigation, depending on how you view things, ended with some pretty shocking results. Approximately 40 artists producing and or associating with the Fashwave content creation and promotion had been identified. But after doing some searching on Spotify's library, I found that most of these creators had been removed, and the amount of Fashwave songs had been severely reduced. However, there were a lot of remnants that had slipped through Spotify's crackdown, including some artists specifically mentioned in the ADL study. Alongside that, there were a lot of Fashwave adjacent content to be found on the platform. Now, to clarify, my subjective definition of Fashwave adjacent relies on how much do these songs praise authoritarian ideologies. For example, the post-World War II far-right or far-left dictatorial regimes in Latin America. Overall, Spotify's effort to remove Fashwave from its platform was bueno. Now, oh fucking boy. Now for SoundCloud. I sincerely cannot express how whack my experience on SoundCloud was when I was researching the topic of this video. So, SoundCloud overall is known for being the music streaming platform where a majority of up-and-coming artists kickstart their careers, and SoundCloud does push out a lot of good sound across hundreds of scenes. None of that, though, is what I found when I was researching this video. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of SoundCloud, allow me to introduce you to A&M. Oh my fucking god. When I came across this artist, I was just using them to find other Fashwave affiliated musicians. Then, the abbreviation made sense when I looked at their banner. Alongside A&M, one of Fashwave's celebrities can be found on SoundCloud as well. While not explicitly promoting white supremacism or Nazism, his content consistently and constantly implies it. The main theme of his music and cover art is based around revolting against the modern world, a mainstream idea promoted by Fashwave. While not many people produce Fashwave content anymore, especially on Spotify, I managed to find dozens of playlists compiling Fashwave and Fashwave adjacent titles on SoundCloud. Too many and too edgy to compile all of them. I'll just show you some of the cringiest ones. Another case worth studying is this playlist, simply titled Fashwave Music. This gives us a prime opportunity to not only observe the cringe, but study it as well. Most importantly, you may notice that the account is from England, an important detail given the evil nature of Britain's existence. There's two distinct parts of this profile picture to dissect. Firstly, Never Lose Your Smile is a reference to the Totenkopf, or skull/death's head, in English, which was originally a Prussian military emblem, then converted into an insignia used by Nazi Germany's 3rd SS Panzer Division. The second part is the Black Sun emblem, a sign shrouded in mysticism, paganism, Nazi affiliation, and just general edginess. It is most affiliated with Heinrich Himmler's occult interest. But anyways, in the past, SoundCloud used to be much more worse, featuring a lot more Fashwave content, including and to name just a few. Now, these artists for the most part have gone dark, and the situation has improved, but overall, it's still SoundCloud. In conclusion, both Spotify and SoundCloud have made shallow attempts to distance themselves from these artists and producers. I believe they do deserve some praise, or at least acknowledgement for these efforts, and the logistical nightmare of finding all this content and removing it does partly excuse them. I still believe it's important to remain critical of these companies so they can continue to improve the listening experience on their respective platforms, because criticism was the motivating factor as to why they underwent these measures in the first place. Fashwave's existence on the internet is an interesting phenomena, and worth studying to understand how the followers of an extremist political ideology express their discontent in the digital era. it is important to inspect radical beliefs and dissect them to their core elements so we can learn from the mistakes of others and apply it to our own lives. This simple mental exercise can help you prevent being a victim from the alt-right pipeline and propaganda. And, as always, my name is Genova, and I'll see you around in fucking terrible health because I am sick. Bye-bye.
Cherry blossoms all around town.